Okay, so hello, welcome. My name is Gabrielle Chester. I'm a software developer at JP Morgan and also a certified Scrum Master. And I also take on that role in my team.
And I'm Carissa Dean, a software developer at JP Morgan as well. And today we'll be talking about how OKRs helped our team to reduce our lead time. OKRs are commonly used for product objectives, but today we'll be showing how our team used them to achieve alignment and continual team improvement, and we'll be highlighting our 5 key takeaways. Firstly, what are OKRs? OKRs stand for Objectives and Key Results, and they're a tool commonly used for organizational alignment and engagement around measurable goals. They were adopted by Google in 1999 by John Dower and helped to support its growth from a mere 40 employees to over 100,000 employees today. They are made up of 2 components: the objective, which is what you want to achieve, and this is usually a short and inspirational statement highlighting the direction you want to take your team or product in, and the key results, which are how you will achieve your objective. Effective key results are usually specific, so they clearly state the measurement. They are measurable, so they are quantifiable, as you will either meet your key results or you won't. And they are verifiable. You need to identify when you have met them. The number of OKRs that you have will usually depend on the level at which you are implementing them. John Dower recommends around 5 objectives and 3 to 5 key results per objective. As you are focusing on a smaller number of goals, this will narrow the team's focus and make it easier to prioritize. OKRs also remove the compensation aspect from goal setting, making it easier for teams to set bolder, more challenging goals, which will subsequently increase productivity and performance. Which brings us onto our first key takeaway. Be ambitious about your objectives. Our team had a dream, which was to deliver high quality code in a shorter amount of time. We knew this was ambitious and that we might not meet it, but it was our ultimate goal. Why was this our goal? Because we wanted to deliver a better user experience. We wanted to deliver fewer bugs, and we wanted to become more adaptable as a team for new and changing requirements. However, the first obstacle we had to overcome was our lack of knowledge around OKRs. So we partnered with an Agile coach who was able to provide us with resources around what OKRs were and how we could use them effectively within our team. We then had a team session where we split into 3 small groups, and in each of our groups, we created OKRs. We then discussed these as a group and took commonalities from each group's OKR to create our overall OKRs. An example of one of our objectives was to produce better code in a shorter amount of time. And our key results were: cycle time of stories is less than 3 days. The cycle time refers to the amount of time it takes from when you start a story to when you finish the story. And more than 75% of peer reviews don't require a second follow-up session with our engineering lead. As part of our team process, we require second follow-up sessions when we have to re-architect our code or design, which is something we wanted to avoid. For us as a team, it was important to have both key result 1 and key result 2 together. As if you look at key result 1, you can easily achieve this just by coding quickly, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're delivering high quality code, which was why we needed key result 2 to ensure we were maintaining our standards and delivering high quality code first time. While it's important to be ambitious about your objectives, it's also important to ensure that your measurements are motivating. A mistake that we made was one of our measurements stated we wanted to achieve 100% fewer bugs in production. However, by wording our measurement this way, we were actually setting ourselves up for failure, because as soon as we had one bug, we were instantly away from that 100% measurement, which meant we were continually making less and less progress, which was something that was demotivating for us as a team. This was something that we learnt from, and now going forward, whenever we create our OKRs, we try to ensure that our key results are something that will be motivating for the team.
So our second key result is to get team buy-in and build habits. It's really important that the whole development team really sees the value in the concepts that you're trying to build. So we did this in two ways. Firstly, we surrounded ourselves with the concept. So we were making OKRs at the team level. And when thinking about these, we had the team at the forefront of our minds. Like, what were the processes and technical requirements that we wanted to improve on as a team? But as we were building these out, we really started to see, okay, it would be helpful here if we had them at the product level as well. And because OKRs have that bi-directional relationship, that meant that we could work with our product owners and our stakeholders to set those OKRs at that product level, and thinking about what is the impact we want our application to have on the firm as a whole. And then we also encouraged each and every developer to also set them on a personal level. For that quarter, what was their personal objectives and use the OKRs to frame them. And by doing this, we were practicing how to set them, and we were also seeing the value in different levels. If a person could see the value on their own objectives, they're more likely to contribute to the team objectives and then also to the product objectives. And secondly, we wanted to build this as a habit. So we used the FOG behavior model to do this. And that says to cement something as a habit, you have to have a combination of high motivation to do it, and it has to be very easy to do. So it's about ability and motivation. So we tried to make this easy to do by setting structured reminders to discuss the OKR. So every Friday after stand-up, we would have 15 minutes or so to just have a look at the OKRs and see what progress we may have made towards them, where we might be falling behind, any sort of opportunities we might have in the coming week to work towards them. And just by having that structured routine, it was easy to bring up the OKRs, and we weren't just setting them at the start of the quarter, forgetting about them, and then realizing we didn't meet them at the end. Secondly, we embedded them into our existing processes. So we are an agile team. We have product backlog refinement, retros, demos, and what we wanted to do was actually bring in the OKRs into those ceremonies. So in our product backlog refinement, we discussed, okay, we're refining these stories. Which one of these are actually going to give us an opportunity to contribute towards our OKRs? So we could see how much of our work was actually contributing towards what we were saying as our main objective for that quarter. And third and finally, we wanted to install this equal responsibility throughout the team. So each developer was responsible for updating the progress of the OKR, understanding them so they could explain them to other stakeholders, and also ultimately for completing the OKR. And one of the ways we tried to do that is that we actually rotated who facilitated that meeting on a Friday for discussing the OKRs. So every team member felt that they did have to understand them and be able to explain them and know how to update the progress and so forth. Okay.
Our third key takeaway: awareness and transparency are key. Awareness can be defined as having knowledge of a certain fact or situation. And when we're thinking about awareness with OKRs, what it means is the whole team should have awareness of what the OKR is, why the OKR is necessary and the values behind it, and how their work contributes to the OKR. For our team, we achieved awareness by creating our OKRs as a team, as I previously mentioned. This ensured that everyone was involved in the process and understood the reasoning behind the OKR. It also meant the whole team was aware of the team priorities. And then transparency can be defined as being able to see through something or to not hide any important information. To achieve transparency with OKRs, This means that everyone on the team is aware of the progress being made towards the OKR, whether it is good or bad, so you're not hiding any of that important information. But it's important, in order to understand the progress, to establish an effective way to track the progress. For our team, we use a software called Jira, which is how we track our user stories. When we're creating our user stories and refining them in our product backlog refinement sessions, we tag our stories with the OKR that they are contributing to. This allows us to spot various patterns, as we can identify which stories are contributing to which OKR, and we can identify which team OKRs are aligned to which product OKRs, as usually stories might be tagged with both of them. We also do manual tracking of our progress using something called Confluence, which is a workspace where you can create and collaborate with your team. We have a team page where once we have finished a story, we will manually track whether it exceeded the 3-day cycle time, which is our key result 1. And we will track the number of peer reviews required and whether we needed to have a second follow-up session with our engineering lead, which was our second key result. Once we have tracked this progress, we then need to have discussions about the progress, which, as Gabby mentioned, this happens for us on a Friday. So this ensures that everyone in the team is up to date with where we are with our OKRs, as we identify the progress that we've made that week, and we will update our progress. We will also discuss measures to put in place to improve our progress towards that OKR for the following week.
So the fourth key takeaway is, if you fall behind, address it. And as Carissa was just saying, transparency and awareness are really important so that you know your progress towards the OKR and you know when you're starting to fall behind. And this is something that happened to us in our cycles. We got around halfway through the quarter and we started to have a few stories that were taking longer than 3 days. And we wanted to see what was going on here. So we used one of our retrospectives to actually run a systems thinking session to try and understand the variables which are at play and to see what was actually causing those stories to run over. So systems thinking is a big topic in itself and could be another presentation, but I'm just going to quickly run through how we used it for our particular use case. So systems thinking is something that comes out of the large-scale Scrum framework, and it's used to analyze systems to understand the different variables which are at play and which ones might be causing a problem in your team and in your broader organization. So if you look at the slide which we have on the screen at the moment, we can see the time the story takes in progress, that's highlighted in red at the start in the middle, and we can see that's the variable that we're trying to influence here, and we're trying to influence that to really increase our goals, and that's to increase the ability that we had to change direction, to more accurately predict when a team might be able to deliver work, and also to ultimately increase the number of features that were being delivered to the users. And if we decrease that time the story spends in progress, we would be able to increase all of those goals. So this diagram, when we actually drew it, was a much bigger diagram, but I've just simplified it a little bit for this slide. We looked at two variables here, which were the size of the story and the clarity of the acceptance criteria. And we saw that they were having an impact on the time the story spent in progress. And then we went through to try and think of some solutions that we might be able to put in place as a team at this halfway point so that we could actually get back on top of our OKR and meet it by the end of the quarter. So one of the solutions that we came up with was to have more meetings with the product owner, because then we could have a greater transparency into our acceptance criteria, make them clearer. And then if we understood and had clearer acceptance criteria, that would decrease the amount of time a story spends in progress because there's less ambiguity around it. But ultimately, we decided actually this might just be a quick fix that we've implemented here, and there might be some other side effects in the system at play. For example, if we say all of the development team have to get in more meetings with the product owner, this might actually reduce the amount of time that they have to spend on their development work, and then it will add time into that into the story cycle in that way. So the solution which we decided as a team was our fundamental solution was to have more design meetings at the epic level. If we were able to have them at that epic feature level, we could scope out the architecture and the different use cases, and then we could break them down in a way where we had more information so that they could be small, iterable chunks that wouldn't take very long, which would allow us to pivot easily. So this is what we found was our fundamental solution, which we agreed on at the end of the quarter. Like, yeah, this is what helped us really get through this quarter. But it's really important to understand here that the process of it is the key takeaway. We found that was our fundamental solution, but it might not necessarily be your fundamental solution, and it won't apply to all development teams. So I strongly advise you here to go through the process rather than just use our solution. And the fifth and final takeaway is to take forward the bits you've learned and leave the rest behind. So I've got a few of our results here on the slide as well. So we found by the end of the quarter, our average cycle time across the quarter was 2 days and 3 hours. And around 70% of our stories took less than 3 days. So we were measuring that cycle time here because that's what we felt as developers we really had influence over, and that was within our control. And we also used Jira to have a blocked column on our Jira board. So if something was outside of our control and blocked due to something which wasn't a developer's in the developer's remit, they could move it into blocked, and then that time wouldn't contribute to the cycle time. And we also found that 92% of our stories required less than 2 PR sessions. So this is what Carissa was saying earlier around trying to avoid that re-architecture of the story later on in its cycle. So we weren't rewriting code. And that's often where you can have that snowballing effect of stories getting a bit out of control. And we also found that around 66% of our stories contributed towards this OKR. So that's where we were tagging them in our product backlog refinement, saying, this is going to help, this is going to contribute, this is going to help us, and having those conversations. So we did put a large amount of focus on the OKRs because we decided at the start that this was our primary objective for the quarter. This is what we were going to focus on. So I really felt we managed to achieve that by incorporating a lot of our work in it. So what we decided we're going to continue for the next quarter is we're going to carry on the structure of the OKR framework. We found it just really simple. We liked the simplicity of the objective and you don't have to set loads of them and there's not some corporate fluffy language around it. We really tried to keep them simple and we knew how we were going to measure them. We also liked how the bi-directional nature of the OKRs, that they could align into the product OKRs and also align into our personal OKRs. We just thought that this really gives clarity around where the product is going as a whole. Secondly, we're going to continue tracking the valuable metrics. So the nature of the OKR framework forces you to be able to track lots of metrics, and you can do this in an automated way and a manual way. And we found that we were doing both. And what we decided to take forward is that we wanted to carry on tracking the valuable metrics that generated really good conversation that we were able to continue to learn from, but we necessarily were going to leave behind the more manual tracking, which were good while we were doing the OKR and gave us kind of a good indication of progress, but we didn't necessarily need to continue that because we analyzed it, we learned the lesson, and then we're ready to leave the manual steps behind. And finally, we're going to continue using systems thinking. So we just really enjoyed this technique as a way to really understand the system which we all contribute to as developers. And we found this was a good way to try and implement solutions. But this is also something that we're going to have to continue to revisit because as systems evolve over time, our diagram and our understanding will evolve over time. So it'll be really interesting to, in a few months, see if we still agree with the fundamental solutions and the different variables which we identified. So just to summarize now, our 5 key takeaways is to be ambitious about your objectives, but make sure that they are motivational. Make sure that they are within the control of the development team. Secondly, so get team buy-in and build habits. So really try and install that sense of equal responsibility throughout the development team. Thirdly, awareness and transparency are key. So really try and get that granular detail of progress that you can continue to assess throughout the whole quarter of the OKR. 4, if you fall behind, address it. Don't bury your head into the sand and say, oh, we might be failing this, but we'll just have to wait and see at the end of the quarter. Really try and actively find out why you might be falling behind here and see what solutions there are to try and fix it. And 5, take forward the bits you learn and leave the rest behind. So have that conversation as a team, see what you found valuable and what you want to continue, but don't feel like you have to take everything with you. You don't want to bog down the whole team with lots of process that ultimately you've already learned the lessons from. So thank you very much for listening to our talk. We hope that these takeaways will also help you with your OKR journey as it did for us. Thank you.
Thank you.